Okay, so in the last video in this unit, we're going to look again at email, and particularly the idea of how can you be polite at the right level depending on the type of email that you're writing. And this has to do with position and imposition. Letters can be more or less formal depending on the position, the relative relationship between the writer and the receiver, and that includes both power, whether they are in a position of power over you, for instance, a professor versus a student, as well as distance. How close are you to them personally? And then the second is imposition. And imposition means how much am I asking them to do in this particular situation? So let's look at the first situation, a simple notification. Notification might be of the time and place for a monthly meeting. Or it could be if you've already written something and then you're continuing the same chain of email. And so you don't have to keep the same level of formality as the first email. Sort of like a conversation. When you greet someone, you say, "Hello, so-and-so," and then you just continue back and forth in the conversation. You don't say hello to that person every time that you initiate conversation. So if it's a regular email exchange, you don't have to keep that same level of formality, particularly in the salutation and closing, the beginning and ending of the letter. So with notification, you may be writing as a student to a professor or to somebody you're asking for assistance. So they have a position of power over you, but you may know the person, but you're not really close to them. But if it's a notification, it's a relatively low level of imposition. And so looking at the different things that we considered in the last email, self-introduction and background may not be necessary if they already know you. For instance, I asked my students sometimes have an absence from class. There's a Professor Chen who has done some studies on email, and she asked her students to write letters that they considered good letters for requesting an absence from class. And here's one. "My kindly teacher Linda, I want to take a leave of absence the next morning because I have to go home for some necessary things. I know you are the most kindly and beautiful teacher, so you would permit my asking, wouldn't you? Sincerely yours, Amy." And what about this? "Well, I want to, I have to." That's very demanding. It's like, I'm going to do it anyway, regardless of what you said. "And you're such a kindly and beautiful teacher." That's irrelevant to you taking a leave of absence from my class. What about a second one? "Dear Dr. Chen, I'm sorry I must request to be excused from class next Wednesday. I understand that attending class is important, but I was asked to attend a job interview that day at 8:30 in Taipei. I've enclosed the notification for you. It will be my pleasure to receive your reply soon. Thank you for your time. Respectfully yours, Angelina." This one is much better. Why? First, it begins with, it's clear that it's a request, but it's apologetic. I know that it's important, but I have something else that I have to do that is important to me. It's a well-supported argument. It's at the same time as the class. There's no way I can change it. So it relates to that particular topic. So again, sometimes I ask my students, which of these do you think would be the best way to write a letter of request? "I can't come to class tomorrow for personal reasons, because I need to take my mother to the doctor, or because my mother has chronic arthritis and can't get around by herself, so I have to go to Miaoli to take her to see the doctor and won't be able to get back in class in time." Which is best? Well, the last one is obviously too much information. I don't need to know all that. But the first one, I'd like to know, is it a job interview that I can say, "Congratulations, I hope you get it"? Is it that you're sick and you'll be back the next week? Is it that you need to help someone else? That helps me as a teacher to know how to respond to this type of notification. Let's move on to the second level, a more formal request. In this situation, again, you're probably writing to somebody who has power. It's probably somebody that you know at least to some degree, and you're asking them to do something, so it's more than just a planned meeting. It's more than a notification. Now, here the principle of directness is important. Chinese and English directness are different. Chinese is known for being indirect. If you have something you don't really want to say directly to somebody, you'll maybe tell somebody else and ask them to tell that person. But in English, you would speak directly to the person, but you say it indirectly. So you use what are called modals. So which of these is the most polite? Could you please look over my paper and give me comments by next week? I want you to look over my paper and give me comments by next week. Please look over my paper and give me comments by next week. Thank you. I would appreciate it if you could look over my paper and give me comments on it by next week. Take a minute to think, which of those is the most polite? Well, it's certainly not number 3. Even though it has please and thank you, and you've been told that that's politeness, it's very demanding in the way that it's stated. The best one actually is the 4th. It's the most indirect. It uses modals would and could, and it's considered the most appropriate and the most polite way of stating this. And so this is from a textbook that I wrote that shows different ways of requesting. And the bottom ones, please or I want, those are just unacceptable. If you're writing from a position of low power to somebody high power, you want to be as polite as possible. Would you? Could you? If you're writing from a position of high power, you may find that your professor say, please do this. Could you do this? Would you do this? But it's more directed because they have power. And you may think, oh, they write that way, I can too. Well, no, because the position, the relationship is different. So in a request to revise something, you might get something like this. Hi, this is the paper I'll submit to JP. The deadline is tomorrow. Please tell me how to revise it. Your student, Anthony. I'm your student. You have to do this because I'm your student, right? Well, the greeting is too informal. The closing, your student, is, again, in English, considered informal. The request, please tell me how to revise it, in this case is demanding. It's not, would you please, but just please tell me. And it's the maximum imposition. This is due tomorrow. Maximum imposition on the person, and probably not going to get a very favorable response. On the other hand, here's another one. Dear Professor Chen, attached is the paper I plan to submit to IEEE. I apologize for sending it to you so late. The deadline is a week from tomorrow. I wonder if you would have time to look at it before then. Sincerely, Bill. This one succeeds. Why? There's a formal greeting, there's a formal closing, it's apologetic. I apologize for sending it so late, even though the deadline is actually a week away. And therefore, the imposition is as little as I can give under the circumstances. This is what you want in a letter of request. Now, give some examples from iGen. This is a letter that I received for a first request to help. We had not contacted this team before, they had not contacted us, and I got this letter. Dear Professor Gerald Rao. Problem with the greeting because you don't use both Gerald Rao with Professor Rao. I'm the leader of the CCU Taiwan iGen team of a certain year. Okay, that's fine, self-introduction, good. Our team is prepared to present our project this year. May I ask that you are free on 4/28 Wednesday or 5/5 Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Sincerely, team leader. Okay, sincerely, that's fine. But they had not even asked us if we would help, and they're asking us to come to a meeting. That's a problem. It seems to assume that because we helped in past years, we're willing to help again. You can't assume that in an email. Here's another one. Dear Professor Gerald Rao and Victoria Rao, greetings. My name is, they gave their name in both English and Chinese, which is helpful, the leader of the Taiwan iGEM team from such a year, and also in such a year in their department. This year, our team wants to try to do this, brief project description. At the Jamboree, we wish to perform well in the oral presentation as well as the poster presentation. They gave the name of their PI for the project, reminded us that Professor Jerry and Professor Victoria are excellent instructors in both English speaking and biological concepts. May we, the CCU iGEM team, could invite Professor Jerry and Professor Victoria as our instructors again to guide us this year. Oh, I feel so good because I've been recognized. My role, my helpfulness in past years has been recognized. And even though the English grammar is not perfect, that's okay. Because what's important is they are trying to build relationship and say, would you help us? They have complete information, very polite request, yes, we'll be glad to. Later on in the process, when they're asking for editing, this was a letter that I received one year. Dear Professor Gerald, okay, again, there's a problem with that greeting, both in terms of the capitalization and the fact that they know that I prefer to be called Jerry, because nobody calls me Gerald. The attached link is the file for improvement of existing parts. Please have a look. Please have a look. That's like, again, from a position of high power to low power, that may be okay, but not in the reverse. So what about this one? Dear Professor Jerry, greetings. Our team hopes to promote this project to the public. This is one of the main concepts of our project. Thus, we create the following flyer. Here's the English version and the related content. Could we have your suggestion for the content to ensure appropriate language use? Sincerely, iGEM team. Nice. Okay, there's an explanation, use of modals. There's no assumption that I must do it, but a very polite request. Finally, a face-threatening email. In this case, an apology. If there's an apology, a response to criticism, a request for quick action, all of these demand a higher level of formality. Let me show you an example from a possible iGEM safety violation a few years ago. This was serious. It could result in disqualification of the team or part of their project. And so it's necessary to be as polite as possible. In this case, it's a very high power situation. It's a high distance. You don't know the person that's writing. It's a high imposition. All of these are very high level and require strict formality. So this was the letter that the iGEM team got from the safety board of iGEM. Hi PIs, instructors, and student team from the Team CCU Taiwan. Again, they're writing from high power to low power. They can say whatever they want. They can use whatever greeting they want. We would like some more details on your videos. First, can you confirm this is feeding mosquitoes? Second, can you confirm they are wild-type lab-grown mosquitoes? Third, whose hand is it? A member of the team or someone else? Many thanks in advance, Piers Millet. Okay, so again, this is informal because it's from high to low power. It asks for 3 particular items for the team to supply. Now, in this case, the PI, the professor, chose to respond, which is appropriate because they have more experience in dealing with this and they can talk more on an equal level with this person than the team could. And so they address, Dear Dr. Millet, they, again, very formal beginning, because even though they are both professors, in terms of power in this particular relationship, Dr. Millet has power to say your team can be disqualified or not. But then in the closing, he signed it, sincerely, Eugene. And so he's trying to move from this very formal relationship to a less formal relationship. He's saying, I hope we can work on this together as colleagues. And then in the body of this letter, he said, first of all, he answered the questions, that it was about feeding mosquitoes, that they were wild-type disease-free mosquitoes raised in a laboratory, and that the hand was one of the team members. And then provided explanations, why and how. We wanted to do this to avoid violating copyrights. It was shot under the guidance of one of the students of this person that had grown these. And these people that helped us are acknowledged at the end of the video. And then again, more detail about why. Why did we do this? We didn't mention it on the safety form because there were no mosquitoes in our experiments, which would have required us to mention it on the safety form. And an apology. I apologize for my negligence for not thinking about this. Please give us a chance to address this issue. Okay? And then based on this, the safety committee replied, thank you so much for getting back to me. It's important that we know that these were disease-free, non-genetically modified, feeding took place in a specialized facility under expert supervision with relevant local and national rules. We've answered all of our questions, and then it's signed yours, Piers. He accepted this collegial, informal relationship, said, we've now moved from this formal relationship to informal. This is okay. So in a face-threatening situation, your attitude has to be very polite and yet collegial. You have to explain, to answer all the questions clearly, completely, and add explanations. Not excuses, but explanations for your actions. And then seek to resolve the issue. Apologize, even if you don't feel you did anything wrong. State your desire to resolve it and list the steps that you have taken or will take in order to resolve that issue. So again, I hope that this is useful in terms of thinking about what levels of email there are and how to treat each of them with the proper level of politeness, and at the same time build relationship with the person that you're writing to.